Rusame reader, Kurosong, and today I will be reading to you from Sticky Notes and Trinkets by RainbowStar_772. That's me! Now, on to Chapter 20. Chats of Crushes and Flirtatious Notes. America hummed, looking around to see if Russia was around before slipping the charmed necklace into the locker. The charm was one he was quite proud of. He'd made it himself. It had two purple hands reaching out towards one another, coming just short in a heart. It was on a black background with little splotches that looked like stars. It was attached to a gold backing that allowed it to be a necklace. He'd engraved the Japanese symbol of luck onto the back of it. That was something his friend Japan had suggested. She wanted him to do that with any charms he made, which he'd been doing since she had shown him the symbol. Once the necklace was placed in the locker, he closed the locker and walked away from it quickly. While he decided where he was going, his thoughts drifted to the person he was giving gifts. He'd noticed that Russia wasn't rude to him. Russia, if anything, was indifferent to him, which wasn't the best, but it was certainly better than Russia being rude to him, or worse, hating him. He had also noticed that Russia seemed to like the gift so far, though there was some frustration that he'd been showing as of a couple days ago. He wasn't sure about why. He'd also kept getting notes from the person he shared biology with. They were actually kind, but very flirty. He really needed to catch them before he accidentally broke their heart. Their attempts were cute, but he was very gay, and they probably weren't his type. He shook his head, ending up settling himself down in the library. He couldn't help but find Russia pretty, as well as attractive. Russia fit his type to a T for the most part. And if he was correct about the pin he'd noticed, Russia was bisexual, and he might have a chance, given Russia didn't hate him. He honestly hoped that he might fit Russia's type. Something in his instincts stirred at the thought. It was a new thing to him, but he was able to place it pretty quickly. He was an avian, so it was probably tied to the craving for a monogamous relationship. The until death do us part type. He couldn't shake the feeling that he might have a crush on Russia, so he ended up texting Liz. Liz, what's up? I might be screwed. I think I may have a crush. Do tell. Do tell. Oh, well. So, you know Russia? I think I have a crush on him. I kinda just wanna cuddle him, listen to him talk, be held by him. I also really like what bits of his personality that I've seen. Also, he volunteers at the same orphanage as I do, the Little Star Circle. He's really nice, and he plays with the kids. He also seems really playful when he's with his friends. You're in love. You're falling hard, hobo. I bet you'd be dreaming about him if you could sleep. I don't want to prove you right, but I can daydream, and I might have daydreamed a little bit about him. After sending that message, he put his phone down and grabbed a book, deciding he didn't want to deal with that can of worms at the moment. He wasn't lying when he said that he might have had a couple daydreams about Russia, because it wasn't a might have had. It was he had had a couple. He couldn't help it. He wanted to be close to Russia. He just kept reading for a while before deciding to see if Russia was at school yet. He preferred being able to see Russia's reactions to the gifts, to know whether or not they were enjoyed. He saw Russia coming with the bus riders, talking with a girl who was a bit shorter. They looked related. He'd seen them talking before and heard a conversation of theirs, so he knew they were siblings. He found a place that he could be hidden in, using the halls that were getting a little crowded to do so. He watched as Russia opened the locker and picked up the necklace. He was smiling, but something was clearly annoying Russia. He frowned a little when he noticed that, but his mood was quickly lightened when he saw Russia put the necklace on. He smiled a little as he went back to his own locker to get his books and work from it. He noticed that Russia was wearing both bracelets he'd made him, which was more than elating to him. Knowing that Russia enjoyed the gifts to that far of an extent, it was nice. All he could really do was hope that Russia finding out who he was wouldn't ruin the gifts for him. He shook his head and started towards world history, admittedly craving his own death during roll call. Mr. Weatherly just couldn't seem to accept that he was there and that he was coherent when he spoke. He zoned out after a little while, his thoughts drifting to Russia again. But Russia didn't seem okay with letting Mr. Weatherly be rude to him like that. That brought him to something else he liked about Russia: his ability to speak his mind and unwillingness to go unheard. It was nice to have someone like that stand up for him, even if otherwise they were ignorant to his existence. If he were entirely honest, he'd just like to be held by Russia. He had the feeling that he'd feel extremely safe and quite comfortable in his arms. And when Russia was just speaking, not snarking at someone, America loved listening to his voice. It was deep and had an accent to it that he quite liked. He didn't get to hear it himself very often, because most of the time that he heard Russia's voice was when he was being snarky to Mr. Weatherly, which may not make his voice comforting, but again, it was nice to hear someone stand up for him. America, what are the origins of the Russ? America was dragged out of his thoughts by the grating voice of Mr. Weatherly. That wasn't even in their textbook, and they sure as heck hadn't covered it. He took a deep breath to collect himself. They were originally, they were a mix of Swedish and Eastern Slavs. The Swedish having set themselves up as a ruling class, but time did what it tends to, and assimilation occurred gradually. America explained quietly. He hated the attention that had been placed on him the moment that he was called on. Before the asshole could continue to be an asshole to him, Russia spoke up, saying, "It's not even in our course material. Leave America the fuck alone, asshole." Russia paused for a moment before looking over in his direction. "Also, not half bad. You are right on the money, I believe the phrase is." America smiled a little at that, a little blush dusting his cheeks at the compliment. He still wasn't used to compliments, even with the sticky notes and the compliments that they contained. He shook his head in a futile attempt to get rid of the blush on his cheeks. He eventually opted to reach into his bag and read a book his sister had recommended to him. So far, he'd been liking it. The book allowed him to escape the reality of a class that bored him half to death. It didn't feel like long before he was pulled out of the fictional world of the detectives he was reading about, as the bell rang and it was time to head to Miss Deckerman's class, which he knew would go by quickly. Before heading to the classroom, he stopped by his locker to drop off the world history book. He flushed red as he read another sticky note that had been left on his locker. He took the note, which said, "You look absolutely angelic today," with a heart, and stuck it to his binder to file away in his room with the plenty other sticky notes that he had from this person. Before leaving his locker, he grabbed his biology book and put away the world history book. He then closed his locker and headed into the next class, a bit surprised to see a note on his desk. In the same handwriting as before, it said, "Hey, don't listen to those assholes. You are beautiful, and there are many reasons to live in this world." He smiled a little and carefully stuck the note into his binder, looking around to see if he could get any hints as to who it was. To his disappointment, there were too many people already there to tell, as Miss Dackerman actually knew how to be nice and make people want to show up. Miss Dackerman came over and smiled at him. She lightly ruffled his hair. "A kind young man cleaned your desk. Told me you'd know him when you see him. Do tell him thank you," she said in her usual kind tone. She was definitely a grandmother figure to him. I don't know who. Could you tell me?" "Well, dearie, if you don't know, they probably don't want you to. I won't meddle in it," she said softly, smiling at him. "Regardless, good morning, sweetheart." Soon enough, the bell had rung and class was starting. Miss Dackerman did her roll call, and after that, America barely noticed when he zoned out, his thoughts fading into daydreams about Russia. And that is the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. Anyway, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord, which is linked down in the description below. That being said, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. Just enjoy your time. And I will see you tomorrow.